All right, am I live? I'm live. Hi, beautiful people. So let me go live really quick on Anchor. So if you don't know, I have a podcast. If this is your first time in here, I talk to people that are doing things to empower other people. And then on Wednesdays, I have this bonus episode where I talk about issues we all go through, and then I bring up these solutions. Let me start recording. Okay. Hi, beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining another episode of Celeste Therapist Podcast. My name is Celeste, and I'm a therapist from Boston. If you've never been in here before, I talk about things we all go through, and then I bring up these solutions to deal with on Wednesdays. But Mondays, we're in season 3, and every single Monday, I have somebody on that's doing something to empower the lives of others by sharing their story. I think there's something powerful when we are able to see when we're able to have somebody that has a similar story to us kind of overcome some things, we start to have hope. And so I think that's kind of what's been happening. I have 146 episodes. Every time I say that, I can't believe I've done this 146 times. So I'm so grateful for you guys for continuously sharing, because I'm in over 100 countries because of you. We're trying to reach all countries. So we'll see. So I'm so grateful for that. On Wednesdays, I actually record this live on YouTube. So if you're not following me on YouTube, make sure you follow me on YouTube, Celeste the Therapist. You can find me there. Also, you can follow me on all social media platforms. I am on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Periscope. I recently started TikTok. I haven't been consistent because I can't figure out how I'm going to implement it into what I do, but you can find me on TikTok. And then I recently started an online course school where it's called Shifting the Way You Think. So if you've never been here before, my motto is like trying to help you shift your thought process. Because if we can get out of our head and start to like rethink things, like we can't change our past, but we can change the way we perceive it. And we can start to look at how we can be an actual, we can start to be the driver of our life. Sometimes we'd be like, life is happening to me, but we can work on changing the way we're thinking about it. So the school online course is called Shifting the Way You Think. And I just rolled out a course called Relationship Goals, which is a guide to a healthy relationship. It's an 8-step course that you can do at your own pace. So I'm really excited about that. And then recently we just had on Dr. Jackman. So if you didn't catch the recent episode, Dr. Jackman was on, and she created this program called InnoPsych, where you can find a therapist that looks like you. She shared her story. She's from Barbados, and she was struggling with finding a therapist here. She waited months, and she said nobody should have to wait 6 months to find a therapist. And I'm like, absolutely agree with you. So she shared her story on that. So you can catch that episode. Today, we're talking about don't be afraid of how you feel. This is important. I think that a lot of times the way that we have been taught to deal with emotions has been to bottle it up. Let me explain. Like, it's not like somebody was like, yo, Celeste, don't deal with your hard emotions, start bottling them up. That was never said to me literally, but I think that when we look at the people in our lives, especially our caregivers, who we probably never really seen cry, or we may have seen them cry, or we have only seen them angry, and nobody's talking about emotions, but we're seeing the direct effect of not dealing with emotions. If you really start to go back and look at your life, even, and you try to figure out like, how are my behaviors the way they are, or you're finding yourself struggling with changing your behaviors, a lot of times is due to like what's happening up here, what you're thinking about yourself, like what you're feeling at the moment. And feelings are very they change, right? They're not always the same. But in the moment of feeling that way, they feel very real, and they feel like they're always going to be there. And I think the only feeling that we tend to be comfortable with sharing or expressing is joy, happiness, the things that feel good. And so the problem with us not dealing with the negative stuff is that it doesn't go anywhere. It literally sits in our system. There's this book that I love. I'm always going to like plug it. The Body Keeps the Score, where this doctor, he's actually from Boston, or he worked in Boston. I'm not sure if he's from Boston, talked about the different patients and the studies he's done, where people, not just their behaviors, but a lot of there's medical issues that we tend to have when we hold on to pain, and then there are some people that try to suppress it, right? I was one of those people, and you suppress it as if you can just get rid of one side, right? So it's like, I don't want to feel this pain, I'm going to go party or I'm going to go drink. And so like you start doing that, like not only do you lose, you may be able to like not think about that or get rid of that negative thing, but you also lose part of yourself in the process, because you start to be unbalanced when you do this. So one of the things that I do on here on Wednesdays is not only do I talk about what we go through, but I like to think about some solutions and ways in which we can deal with it. So even though and I just want to be clear on the part of the solution part, because even though I say that I'm very solution focused with mental health is not a one size fits all. I like to give different ways in which you can think about doing this. Pull from it what you can. Some things may not apply to you, but it's better than not doing anything. I always tell people, if what you're doing isn't working, like, why not try something different? So I really believe that. And that's my whole mindset around shifting the way you think. It's like, you should really try something different. If this isn't working for you and you're finding yourself struggling, like, what's the big deal with looking at a new way to think about things? When I started going to therapy for myself, I remember the therapist talking about like positive affirmations and kind of looking at things different. And I remember thinking, like, how is me being like having positive affirmations going to change everything that's happened? Right. My mindset around it was kind of warped. Like, when I think about the way that I thought about healing back then, I completely understand why we tend to get stuck in the way that we feel, because it feels like saying words or thinking differently, or just because I do this, it's not going to change what happened. And you're absolutely right. Nothing changes what happened, but it changes the direction in which you're going to start to go. So the first thing I want you to think about is ask yourself, why am I struggling with dealing with my feelings? If you're somebody, well, if you're like Celeste, you know what? I'm struggling with, I don't want to talk about nothing. Well, it makes me feel vulnerable. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to feel these hard emotions. Ask yourself, why am I struggling with dealing with my feelings, right? We got to get to the root of the problem. I think that's important. And so really like dissect that, right? Number two, our feelings have deeper messages that are usually related to our thoughts. So what you can start to do is start to write out your thoughts, THOUGHTS, to connect the dots. I'm getting tongue tied today. So start writing out your thoughts to connect the dots. And this process isn't like a overnight process. It's not going to take place right away. But if you could start to create something like that in your system, and if you're somebody that you like, you know what, I don't like writing on a notebook, I don't want nobody to find it. They have apps where you can check in, where they'll remind you, hey, how are you feeling today? Right. So start writing out your thoughts. In order for us to really start to understand and process life, we have to stop and breathe. We have to stop and think about what's happening. We cannot keep doing things just because they've always been done that way, especially if you feel like you're surviving and not living. So that's number two. As you're processing your emotions, you'll start to have a clear picture, understand some of the emotions might not be yours, right? Sometimes we carry other people's crap. Like, it's just the reality, especially if you're an empath, especially if you're in a relationship that's not the healthiest, especially if you have family members that you've always kind of been around for and helped, right? A lot of times, some of the emotions that we're feeling may actually be connected to somebody else's issues. And so we have to learn how to separate ourselves from them. Not literally, not like we don't need to be around those people. Like, it could be people you love, it could be like your best friend, your mom, your child. But we have to understand, like, we have to allow them to deal with that emotion. Sometimes we get so caught up into other people's stuff that it feels like it's our stuff when it's not our stuff. So that's important to understand. You can begin to have control over your emotions, and your emotions will not control you. And I think that's the biggest thing. When I talk about having control over your emotions, it doesn't mean that your emotions and the negative things that you don't like feeling just kind of stops and you just feel joy all the time. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that your emotions won't be the driving force to why you're making the decision that you choose to make, right? A lot of our decisions that we make are actually because we're anxious and then we get impulsive, right? Just a quick example, my first test for my licensure to be a therapist, I failed. And I remember taking the test and I felt so anxious. And in order for that anxiety to be relieved, I impulsively just kept pressing a button just so I could get to the next question and get to the next question. And every time I pressed the button, the anxiety, I was relieved by it. But a big part of it, I wasn't even prepared to take the test. But I think like when we start to understand where our emotion is coming from, we can work on dealing with it. So my anxiety was coming from the fact that I didn't prepare for the test, right? Because when I went back and took it again, I was more prepared and there was no anxiety there. So sometimes there are things that we need to do to help us with our thought process or the way that we're feeling. And once we start to do those things, we'll start to understand that we actually have more power and control over our emotions than we realize. I always say like there's a lot of people that are sitting in jail. There's a lot of people that have like lost people, not like literally, but people no longer talk to them because, some of the decisions that they've made. And then when we stop and think about the past, people that are in jail, like that are maybe changing their life around after making decisions that didn't make any sense, like when they stop and think, more times than not, they're going to make a different decision if they had it to do over. So it's like, why do we need to wait until we like screw up? Why can't we just like figure it out before? Like, yeah, we're going to feel anxious. We're going to feel sad. We're going to have anger. But do we have to act on that anger? Like, that's my biggest thing. And I tell my kids that all the time. Like, it's okay to be upset that you couldn't get a cookie or you're on punishment, right? I'm not mad if you're upset, right? If you grew up in a household, it's like, what are you mad for? Like, you get in trouble and it's like, what are you mad for? Like, obviously I'm mad because I'm in trouble. Like, I get that maybe it's something that I did, but like being upset about it, like that's a human response. Now my actions to be being mad, if I'm slamming a door, breaking stuff in the house, like now that's a consequence right there. But if you are upset, like that's not a consequence. Like I'm happy that you're able to express that you're feeling upset. And then now let's work on ways to deal with how you're feeling so that you're not just like going crazy in the house, right? So the biggest thing I want you to know about this process is that it's a journey. If you're somebody that has grown up or has always like suppressed your emotions and suppressed your pain, it's not something that's just going to take place overnight. So definitely be patient with yourself, be kind with yourself, because you're human. And so if anything I ever say resonates for you, like understand, like you have power to make changes. Like I think we don't understand like how much power we have within. Like we can really tap into that power. You have the power to make the changes, but in order for that to happen, like you have to have faith to believe in yourself. And when you start to have faith and believe in yourself, like nobody can take that away because that's your faith. So thank you guys so much. Don't forget, follow me on social media. If you want to support the podcast, make sure you leave a rating on anywhere you listen to podcasts. I believe you can only leave a rating on iTunes. I'm not sure, but I know people listen to me on different like places. So definitely leave me a rating. I appreciate you guys so much. And until next time, I will talk to you guys later. All right, you too.
Okay.
Thank you
Hi, beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining another episode of Celeste Therapist Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in, YouTube. I'll be back next week. Don't forget to follow me everywhere. Hey, wait, I forgot my name for you. It's not Monica. My name for you is Rose. Hey, Rose. Thank you for popping in. I appreciate you so much. All right, I'm gonna go now so I can upload this so the people can hear it.